Hi, Annie here, and today I was going to film a video inspired by Jack Howard's latest My Favorite Movies video that he did, and I couldn't choose at all. I was having such a tough time, but I did have easy time figuring out some movies that I was very nostalgic about. So that's what I'm going to talk about here today. So let's get started. So the first one I've got to talk about is the original Cheaper by the Dozen, starring Clifton Webb and Myrna Loy. This was one of a handful of movies my parents recorded off of the PBS station onto VHS for us as a kid. I don't think at any point we really had more than 10 movies on tape growing up, and this was one of them for a long time. We also ended up at a cottage one year with only Cheaper by the Dozen, and it was like the rainiest 2 weeks ever, so we watched this, I think, more than once a day. I was quite young. I think I was around 8 or 9. But either way, it became kind of an enduring favorite. I pull it out all the time. I feel like I miss it when I go too long without watching it. You know, if it's been a year and I haven't seen it, I'm like, oh, I think it's time to watch Cheaper by the Dozen again, because it just became such a part of life at one point and such an enjoyable part. Really loved Myrna Loy. I liked her. I knew it was based on a true story, which was quite appealing, although unfortunately the true story was not quite as upbeat as the movie was, which I guess isn't all that unusual really when you think about it. Cheaper by the Dozen was definitely one of the first movies I remember really watching over and over again. The second movie I have here is Meet Me in St. Louis. This was another one that they used to air on PBS and TVO all the time when I was a kid, and we watched it, and then eventually we got it recorded. Again, the next year we went to the cottage, we were prepared. We had Meet Me in St. Louis and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Unfortunately, that year was even rainier, and I think I forced my brother to watch this about 3 times a day. I'd let him watch Ninja Turtles once. I like Ninja Turtles, but I wanted to dance to Meet Me in St. Louis. I wanted to be Judy Garland. I wanted to be Tootie. I wanted it all. I loved this. I love a lot of old musicals, but this one is probably the one that has the softest place in my heart. I just grew up loving the old MGM musicals especially, and I really loved Judy Garland before I really understood too much about her or her life. The next movie I have here is Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, and this is probably my favorite of all the Shirley Temple movies. I couldn't completely tell you why. I know I love the music. I know there's some character actors in this that I adore. All of her movies had unwavering positivity to them, so that wasn't it. I watch this movie still quite often. I do like the message of looking on the brighter side of things and trying to see the good, and the idea that everything will kind of fall into its own place, even if it's not the place you thought it would in the beginning. The next movie I have to talk about is Mary Poppins, and I mean, I think this was part of a huge number of children's childhoods. None of these are exclusive to me. I know that Dick Van Dyke's accent isn't the best. I know the movie is flawed, but again, it captures that moment in time for me, that it reminds me of days spent watching TV with my brother or on my own. At different points in my life, I've liked different sections of this movie more, and as a child, I absolutely hated the Feed the Birds scene. It seemed kind of scary and dark, and that section where the kids run off and are on the rooftop, I couldn't watch. I'd leave the room when I was a kid, but the Feed the Birds number is probably one of my favorites now in Mary Poppins. I mean, there's spectacular dance numbers and amazing things, but Feed the Birds, there's something so poignant about that I think as I've gotten older, I appreciate Mary Poppins in a different way. And I see Mary Poppins herself in a different way as I've gotten older. And it's a way that the movie has kind of grown and changed with me. And that's part of what I love about going back and rewatching things that I watched in childhood or that were with me in childhood, because sometimes it's interesting to see things from a different point of view from what you did when you were 8. And sometimes it's horribly disappointing, and other times I feel like it helps you grow and helps you learn more about yourself and other people as well. The Parent Trap is my next movie. This was another one that used to get aired on TV once or twice a year, and we eventually taped onto VHS for us to rewatch. It definitely had big chunks missing from the syndicated version with the commercials that we saw. But again, it was one that really stuck with me. I loved the musical numbers. I was always looking for the tricks with the camera, the green screening and the special effects. I loved that. I knew it only had one person playing the role, and I loved it. I also knew that Hayley Mills in real life at the time was kind of close in age to my mom, and in the campgrounds she had the idols hanging on the wall in the cabin were people that my mom had grown up watching and loving. And that, I don't know, I mean, is it weird to associate that maybe this was what my mom was like as a kid, even though I know she wasn't anything like that? I think it was just the first time I was really aware of like that older people used to be young, and then forever I associated that character who I'd realized that about because Hayley Mills was doing stuff, I think, in current time that I'd seen her in, and then I was watching this as well, so I became aware of like that she was an adult but had been a child. And I think it was the first time I really fully grasped that young people grow older, which sounds horrible, but or maybe a bit sad, but it was, and I kind of forever identified that with my mom, even now when I know that I don't think she was necessarily hugely like either of those characters, but just because of the age thing, I always identify her with that when I watch the movie. As well as loving the special effects and the stories, and Hayley Mills and the music and the scenery was to die for. And again, I think it was fun, the idea that you could have a secret sister out there. I didn't have a sister, and so that seemed really exciting, the fact that you might get one. But I don't know, it wasn't that I wanted to live that life. It was just that the movie came to me at a point in time when my interests and thought processes about a lot of things were being sparked. And so I identify a lot of kind of my beginning thoughts about different things with this movie. I think it was the first time I really thought about California as a different place. Like, I knew there was different places, but it was the first time I was like, I'd love to be there. The ranch just looked gorgeous, and I don't know, it was like everything was coming together, and I was just becoming really aware of things, and this movie is forever associated with that in my life. Every time I watch it, I just kind of feel that wonder, even though there's maybe not, it's a great movie, but I don't think there's maybe as much in it as I associate with it, if that makes sense. The next movie I'm going to talk about is Annie. And this one, of course, there's a girl named Annie. It's another redheaded orphan. There's Anne of Green Gables and Little Orphan Annie. Both redheads, both with my name. That never bothered me as a child. It always bothered me. But I loved Bernadette Peters in this, and I loved Carol Burnett. I liked the music in it. I did like to dance around to the music, but I'm picking this one because as I got older and was in high school, I used to take this movie with me when I was babysitting down the street, and it ended up becoming like the thing we did every time I babysat. And she used to want to dance, like to reenact the entire movie like as we watched it in their living room. As exhausting as that was, I look back on it really fondly because it was fun. And I mean, by the third time in an evening, I was dead. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was willing to bribe, cajole, lie about the time, anything to get back sitting down. But it is still some of my fondest memories. And as much as I loved Annie before that, and I'd taken it down there to share with her, I love the fact that she loved it that much. It like captured her so much that she wanted to have that experience with it. And yeah, it was just kind of neat to spark that in somebody, and it was neat to have those memories of dancing around and being just like exhausted to the point where her parents would be so shocked when they got home and she was asleep, and it was like, yeah, because we've been dancing for 5 hours before you got home. But so that one holds a special place in my heart for that reason. Again, I hated the ending as a child. The part with the chase at the end I could not deal with. But as I got older again, I liked it. I was like, wow, this is actually a better movie than I remember it, because if you watch the kind of tense parts, it's of course a better movie. The next movie I have here is Spice World. And the Spice Girls, when they came out, captured a feeling, a moment, an excitement in time that I highly identified with. I bought fully into the girl power thing. I wanted that. I believed that that was the future. I felt like there was nothing we couldn't do. I felt like there was nothing I couldn't do. And that was a huge deal. There hadn't been that representation of female artists quite the same way before them. And certainly not artists getting covers of teen magazines and that kind of thing. And it was hugely exciting. And I was so excited. I was so excited when Spice World, the movie, came out. And I just wanted to always hang on to this feeling. And I remember loving the fact that they were like women empowerment. In many ways, they seemed like an accessible version of feminism, a feminism that I kind of instantly understood. It was wanting to look pretty, but not taking any shit, because the prettiness had nothing to do with anything else. Your brains or how people treated you should have nothing to do with what you chose to look like, and whether you wanted to dress kind of sporty and more in tracksuits, and I felt like it was allowing you to be whatever you wanted to be, and it didn't matter what other people thought. And that's what I took away from it. And for a long time after, I watched this quite a lot, and I felt that, and I felt like it gave me strength and power, and I feel like intensely lucky that the Spice Girls did come into my life when they did, and lucky that there was kind of a little conglomeration of kind of, not necessarily women's lib, but like things that I watched that had very strong female characters in them, because I don't think there was ever a time in my life that I really felt like I couldn't do something because I was a girl. There was many other things that maybe sometimes felt like they were holding me back, but never the fact that I was a girl. And I feel really lucky for that, because I just didn't question it. And I know that's not an experience a lot of people have. And yeah, so I do, the Spice Girls will always hold a place in my heart and my memories of school and beyond. Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging is kind of a bit of a different one in this category, because although I only watched it for the first time a few years ago, and it's a newer movie, I very much spent the rest of the night after watching it remembering my childhood and high school and friends that I hadn't necessarily thought about for years that I was friends with in high school, and the conversations and the boys that I'd been in love with, and how all the things in life just seemed so important and intense at that point. And so it's a very nostalgic movie for me without having watched it in that time frame. It was a movie that reminded me kind of in a very intense way of that, my own period of time in my life at that same age. And that was a really weird experience, and I feel like I didn't quite see that coming. Like, watching the movie, I was like, oh, this reminds me of this, and this reminds me of this, but I didn't expect that kind of avalanche of things I hadn't thought about in years to come down on me. And it was good stuff. Like, it wasn't bad memories. It was just stuff that I'd forgotten about how I used to think. And it's good and bad and bittersweet and happy. And there's people in my life from that point in my life that I really miss. And I wish I could recapture some of that. And then there's things that I'm like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not that age anymore. I'm so glad that life isn't that bubble of intensity that's always ready to explode. Although I can be intense now, I feel like it's easier to gain perspective than it was, at 15, 16. And so that's something that was like an amazing surprise to me. And I've watched it a few times since, and it does the same thing every time. And actually I find that I remember different things every time I watch it. Like, I remember deeper and different things, and I remember conversations from, math class or English that happened that I just hadn't probably thought about since the end of school and the last time I saw those people. And I miss that, but I don't miss it. I wish that I had more pictures or video of the people that I miss now from there, because I feel like at the time I didn't necessarily know that it was going to be the people that I am missing that I would miss. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize that the people that would either still be in my life or that I'd miss from my life were the people, I certainly didn't know that at the time. I thought it would be different people, and they just weren't the ones that either stuck with me or that kind of stuck with me in my heart. And I really wish that I had kind of more memories, like, to look at from those people and those times. But this was an amazing kind of experience to have and to rewatch, and I'll certainly pull it out more. And again, probably this is telling you too much about who I was as a teenager, but yeah, it kind of has turned into a very special movie for me. So that's it. Those are some of my favorite nostalgic movies. I have tons. I'm a very nostalgic person, so there's many that I could have included, but these were more of like my childhood favorites. I'd love to hear what yours are, so let me know in the comments below, or if you have a video where you talk about them, make sure to link it up. I'd love to see it. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. I put out a video every Wednesday, and I'll see you next week. Bye!